welcome to the fourth and final video in this series of 4 of creating a login and registration system using PHP and MySQL. So previously we'd looked at hashing passwords and putting them in a database. We'd looked at using sessions to protect pages, and we'd also looked at using that password to log in. So now we're going to give the user the opportunity to register on our site. So within our sample files, we've got a register link where users can choose to register with us with an email as their username and then a password, and they'll need to confirm that password. So in our file system, we have a register page, and that's just a simple HTML form that's going to send registration request to this process folder and call a file called user registration. So in here we've got user registration, and there's no logic in there at the moment. So inside the user registration form, we're going to do some familiar things. We're going to require in our sessions file that switches on our sessions, our secure sessions. We are going to load in our connection file because we're going to want to add this user to the database if they meet all the requirements of a user. And then we'll be adding some more bits and pieces into that page in a second. But first, let's just show you in the PDF supporting this lab, there's some error messages. So I've come up with 3 different error values. So firstly, it might be an invalid email. We do want to register with an email address, so we're calling that error 1. They may provide an invalid password, so we'll call that error 2. And the email may already be registered with the system, so we'll call that error 3. So all those are going to get stored in a session variable that's called, I'm going to call reg error, registration error. So we're going to add a switch case that's going to take that session variable of either 1, 2 or 3, and it's going to output an appropriate error message. So in each case 1, 2 or 3, they'll get echoed out with an appropriate error message. So that is going to go in our register page, where there should be a little hint there for you to put the error messages around about line 20. So let me just format that nicely for you so you can see the structure of the switch case. So case 1 is error 1, case 2 is the wrong password, and then case 3, so error 3 is that they're already registered, and that's the end of our switch. That's not the end of our is set, so it's only going to do that if you've actually got an error message being set. Okay, right. So we can head back to user registration, build some logic to set those session variables. So first thing we're going to do is check whether the email is valid. So we've seen this trick used before in the login movie. We're going to say, is the user login, which has been posted from the user registration, is it a valid email? So we're using PHP's filter var method, and we're going to store that away in reg login. So that'll return false, or it will return a valid email address. We're also going to store in a variable our password, so we'll stat away in reg password, just be easy to handle in that way. We're going to have our reg password confirm as well, because we've got a password registration field, so these will be 2 different fields in the form, and we obviously want to make sure that they match. Right. So let's start with some conditions then. So this is saying if exclamation mark reg login. So if this isn't a valid login, if it isn't a valid email, then we'll set the error to 1. We'll bounce them back to the register page as the referrer, and we'll exit this part of the application. So let's put that in our page. So this is invalid email. And just format that up for you to see a little bit nicer. So there's our redirect, there's our exit. So that's the only logic that we've got in at the moment in terms of a redirect. Right, so let's save that and try that on the server. So over on the server, we've got an invalid email address. We try and register, and it comes back with the appropriate error message. So our first check has worked fine. So the next check is to see if the password entered matches a confirmed password. So relatively straightforward one, that. So we'll say if the registered password doesn't equal the confirmed password, or indeed if it's empty, then we're going to throw error 2 and then redirect accordingly. So let's put that logic into our register, user register. So let's just format this again. So there's our conditions, and there's our error message, there's our redirect if we hit this error and we exit out so nothing else gets executed, and then we will get to doing some valid code if everything's good, because we've got another check to do yet. So we're checking here to see if we have passwords match, which they hopefully do. Right, so let's put that on the server. So back in the browser, I'm going to inspect. I'm going to go to application and just delete that session ID for now, just so you can see the new error message that we hope to get. So, let's make this a valid email address of sorts, and we've got a password there that doesn't match that one, so it should come back with please confirm your password. So it has picked up error style 2. Great. Right, so let's have a look at if the user is already registered. So this is going to require us to query the database. So we're going to start building an SQL query. So we'll put together an SQL query. We're going to do select star from the users table, which was created in an earlier movie. We're looking to see if user login is equal to some placeholder for user login, because we're going to do a prepare statement to protect against SQL injection. Very important for this kind of application, because we are taking user input here and putting it in our database. So we'll prepare that query using our PHP data object, which is loaded from our connection file, and then we'll bind in our reg login. So that's the value that the user suggested they'd like to use as their login name. We're going to bind it into this placeholder into here as a string. We'll execute that query, so we'll run that query once it's been prepared and it's had its variables bound, and then we're going to find out the number of users that match that, because if we've got one, they are not a valid user, they're already registered. So if the number of users equals 1, then that's the case, it's error 3, they're already registered. Let's redirect them back out to this referrer. Else, so if it's not the case that they've already registered, then great, we will then store their details and register them. So we'll deal with storing the details later, but let's add in at the end of the document here the referrer route. So we'll just add this header redirect in to wherever we're referred to. So what I'm doing here is I've got a variable called referrer, which will depend where we're going to send them. We might be sending them to register, might be sending them elsewhere. So we'll bounce them back to register and exit. So if we test that now. We should be able to, we want to check that we're getting error number 3. So let's test that. So back here in the web page, I'll just delete my session ID, just refresh. Right, so this time we are testing error 3, which was that the user already exists. So we had John at gmail.com, that's our test user from earlier, so password, we'll just put it as test. And you see that's already registered, so that is fallen into error 3, reg error 3. So that's proved that we get into the third trap. So this clause here is what we'll do if they are successfully registering. So they've not registered before and their username and password are valid. So we're going to do an SQL insert statement. So we'll do insert into users, the user login and user password with these two placeholders, so colon user login, colon user password. We're going to use a prepare statement to prevent SQL injection. So we shall prepare that SQL into a PHP statement object, and we'll then bind in our hashed password. So what we're doing here is we're creating a password which is a hashed version of the one that they wanted to register. So this is the password that the user posted in, and we are hashing it as we saw in a previous movie using bcrypt to store that in the database. This is one-way encryption, remember, so once that's hashed, only the user who set it will know what it is. In the database it will appear as hashed. Right, so we've got two we've got two placeholders to bind in. First of all, user login. That's the user's registered login email address that we've validated up above, and then that password, hash password, gets validated in next as well. So that goes in as well. Right, one last little test to do. So we'll execute that query now, and then we are good to go. We'll just run a little if statement here, because if any errors were previously created, we'll unset them. So unset method has been used to remove reg error sessions. So any errors created from the previous registration, we'll just clear them out as a tidying up process, and then we'll refer them into login.php so they can log in with those new credentials. Okay, let's move that to the server and give it a try. Okay, let me clear out the sessions and we'll refresh. Let's try and register with a new user then. So John at Gmail's already in there, but what about John at Tmail? Oh, like tmail.com, and his password is test, and let's register. So I'll just put my clipboard in case I forget it. So we'll register in. Quite happily took that in. So we've got John at tmail.com, test, log in, and we can log in to the system. Let's just check that that value, prove that that's in the database. So in the users table now, there's John at tmail.com, and there's the hashed password, which is presumably the hash of test. So there you go, that's the registration system set up as well. Things you could do to take this further, you could look at using JavaScript's HTML5 to add some client-side validation to the form, and you could look at using PHP's mail method to build an email registration system and send a verification link. Okay, thank you very much.